Today, I want to talk with you about how to inspire Generation Z as an educator to begin their awakening, so to speak, so that they can thrive and become the most successful, most joyful, and most authentic version of themselves in our classrooms. But first, I want to share with you an experience that gave me the confidence to be here with you today, and it occurred in the second grade. The second grade, you might say, wow, this must be one heck of a story. But the truth is, it isn't. It's only remarkable to one person, and that's me. But I wanted to share it with you because it demonstrates how an educator can really impact the course of a child's life for the better. It was just a simple gesture on her part, and she probably doesn't even remember it, but I do. We were all given the assignment to write a report on an animal of our choosing in the second grade. My animal was not a dog or a cat or anything super cool like a cheetah or a dolphin. My choice was the snowy owl. And it just seemed like such a unique animal to write about. And I've always had a fascination with owls. In fact, if you are a millennial and you grew up in the era of tie beanie babies, where the lines wrapped around the McDonald's 3 and 4 times to get the miniature tie beanie babies, then you probably know the beanie baby that I'm talking about, and that was Hoot the Owl. Anyway, I digress. So as I was writing my report, my mom, of course, made sure that I wrote neatly and I spelled everything correctly. And when I was done, I decided to put my report in a purple folder because in the picture of the snowy owl, he just looked so regal. Yes, purple. This is the best color for my report, my 8-year-old self thought. So the next day with pride, I handed in my report in all of its regality and splendor. And a couple of days later, we received our reports back with our markings, our grades, and our feedback from the teacher. And the only thing that my teacher docked me for was my handwriting. For some reason, the letter C, when I write it, it's not curved enough, and I have just terrible handwriting. But anyway, aside from that, when I got to the last page of my report where the teacher wrote her comments, she said, "Great job, Knikki. You write like a 3rd or a 4th grader." And when I read that, second grade me was so proud. And even though she probably doesn't even remember this, as a child, I felt validated and inspired. I also felt motivated to continue writing. I'm good at this, I thought. It's something that I enjoy, even to this day, of that teacher taking the time to write that comment in my report. And all of this was catapulted because of that one teacher. She inspired me, she validated me, and appreciated my effort. But unfortunately, school was not always that way. And my situation, along with that of many others, was no exception. As the years went on, I, along with many of my fellow students, realized that school was not always this rosy safe haven where our talents could be cultivated, explored, and developed, and where we'd eventually become the best version of ourselves, ready to take on the world. In fact, school was sometimes the very opposite of that. It was the place from which some of our deepest insecurities would originate, and they would follow us well into adulthood. And it honestly brings a little tear to my eyes every time I talk about this, but I'm going to share with you another true story that I tell my Gen Z students year after year. It's a story of deep insecurity that I hope inspires them to begin making their own decisions and not to succumb to the pressures, behaviors, and opinions of others. Now, as I start telling my story to my students, I usually will ask them to describe me as a teacher. What adjectives would you use to describe me? Some of them would say confident, capable, but the truth is, as I tell them, that I am literally just a kid at heart and also a ridiculously insecure and naive individual that feels like I have no idea what's going on or what to say or how to be a responsible adult. And to be honest, I tell them, I really don't even know why the administration let me be a teacher, but somehow I convinced them into thinking that I am a responsible adult. So that's a win. And they always laugh and smile. But then I tell them, how you are describing me right now is not how I always came across. And in some ways, even now, I still struggle. And it all keeps circling back to this one instance in middle school. At the time, I was probably in the 7th or 8th grade. And I remember that at the time, I was thinking about trying out for the high school JV softball team. I had received some encouragement from my youth league coaches and thought, hey, it's worth a shot. Now, if you were where I'm from, you would know that softball was ultra competitive. Tears and blood were shed over this sport, and I knew that. And I still wanted to be a part of it because sports were my life at the time. But one day, as I was leaving the locker room and getting ready to go to my next class, my PE teacher, who was also the softball coach at the time and someone who I really looked up to, she came up to me and she said something. And before it even came out of her mouth, I already knew. I don't know how, but I already knew what she was going to say because softball tryouts were just a few days away. Hey, Knikki, you're not thinking about trying out for the softball team, are you? I knew it. Even at a young age, I knew that she would subtly try to discourage me from trying out because she already had her picks of who she wanted on the team. And I remember looking up to her, feeling deeply insecure. And I said, no, I'm not trying out, even though I had every intention of doing so. So in just a few short years, I had gone from excited and hopeful to deflated and insecure. And it's the negative moments that we remember the most, right? And my students usually nod. Now, in her mind, I clarify, she may have had the best of intentions. She may have thought that she was going to spare me from disappointment by getting me to cut myself. But I still cringe when I think of our interaction because her voice to this day recycles itself in my head in different situations saying, you're not really going to do this, are you? You're not really going to give this presentation, this TEDx talk, and embarrass yourself in front of all these people, right? Now, can you relate to having an experience like this in school? My kids, of course, always nod yes. And now it's usually at this point where I give them some time to share some of their stories with their classmates before we continue. And believe me when I tell you, their stories are more than heartbreaking. You could literally spend an entire class period just on that. Now, to clarify, I tell my students that I don't consider myself a victim. It was not a major deal not to play for the JV softball team, and these things were not hugely significant, but this moment was one of many in school that planted the voice that I and many others have in our heads that make us shrink back, live small, and constantly compare ourselves with others, which of course is a battle that we will never win. And this brings me to the core of this talk. How can we as educators empower our Gen Z students so that they're not, they don't feel this way, but rather that they feel confident in themselves, motivated in our classes, and truly capable of excellence? Now, you might be asking yourselves right now, how can we accomplish something so monumental, especially with everything going on right now? Maybe you're thinking to yourself, I'm feeling overwhelmed myself because there are so many obstacles in our lives and also in our minds. Our minds, though, create challenges that we must overcome. And the mind ultimately is a powerful tool. And if we instill a positive self-image of ourselves, those challenges will become the driving force for our ultimate success. And here's the thing. If there is anything that this past year has taught me, it's the need to see people for who they truly are and to guide them so that they can become the person that they were meant to be. If someone were to ask me right now, Knikki, describe Gen Z in one word, I would say empty. Empty of hope, empty of empowering knowledge, empty of confidence. And after teaching, talking with, and observing my students in both the virtual and traditional learning environments this year, I've seen school drain them of every ounce of hope, creativity, and curiosity. So I want to share with you 4 ways that when applied consistently in the classroom will curb this emptiness and make your students feel fulfilled, validated, capable, and recharged, not just in your class, but in their lives, and they will never forget it. Number 1, add value to their lives by inspiring yourself. At the beginning of this pandemic teaching journey, I realized that I had to start taking care of my mindset. If I wanted to inspire others, specifically my students, I had to take the time each day, at least 15 to 30 minutes, to find something that inspired me or educated me in some way. In my classroom, I will either use my own experiences like the ones I shared with you, those of someone else, or as soon as I wake up in the morning, I will listen to amazing and successful podcasts or YouTube videos and then tailor that information to my students. But the key is to find something that fills up their glasses so that I can then pour into them. Number 2, be in the moment to validate their voice. Now, I can't take credit for this idea because one of my students stated this year, Gen Z knows that they are a generation of change, but I'm not sure if it's a positive change, said the student. That same student then said that Gen Z wants their voices to be heard so much that they don't stop to listen to the voices of others. This is why it is so vitally important to listen to your intuition and be in the moment with your students so that when an opportunity comes, you will see it for what it is, an opportunity to refresh, to listen, and to teach. And they will begin to feel refreshed, appreciated, and validated by your example and begin to do the same for others, which will then help them to engage in more rational and empathetic dialogue. Number 3, ask the right questions. Like in my situation with the softball coach, she did not ask me what I wanted. She assumed that she knew what was best for me. And in situations like this, it's important to show that you care about your students, their goals, and their concerns. So pause and ask questions like, what obstacles are prohibiting you from accomplishing your goals? What roadblocks are you experiencing? How would you like this situation to be resolved? And would you be interested if I showed you? Are you a person who enjoys? Would it be helpful if could we explore this idea together? And number 4, give them hope through your example. Almost every day that I see my kids, I communicate with them on the progress and failures that I've made in my personal business and in my health journeys. And on the days where I felt kind of lacking a little bit, I used the stories of others who faced adversity and overcame it. And through these conversations, the students learn that we all have the ability, not just to move the needle, but to completely transform our own lives and grow. And when they see us taking action to build a future that we are proud of, it shows them that they too have a future and plenty of reason for hope. Then the next day, I start all over again, filling them up with inspiration, joy, and empowering knowledge so that they feel inspired, cultivated, and more importantly, complete. And when we do this, they will leave our class each and every day, as the ancient proverb states, with a cup that runneth over. And then I start all over again tomorrow, filling up the glass. Thank you.